Hello, Jason Han. Thanks so much for accepting the interview. I know you are a very busy person, but it's a pleasure to have you here in Taekwondo Passion.
No, I really appreciate you reaching out, and I looked through some of your past interviews, so it's an honor to be included with some of these really amazing people that you've interviewed so far.
Thank you. I hope the interview will be great for all the Taekwondo audience to help others, to inspire others, and to help them with practical advice.
Yeah, I hope so.
Great, excellent. Well, for people who don't know you, who is Jason Han? How your work right now?
I'm a former U.S. national team athlete. I was on the U.S. national team for about 7 years. When I stopped competing, I went to physical therapy school, so I'm a physiotherapist. So I hold many different hats right now. So first and foremost, family man. I have a amazing wife, 2 kids. On top of that, I am the physiotherapist and head of rehab for the Los Angeles Football Club, which is a professional soccer team here in Los Angeles. In addition to that, I co-own a clinical practice with my wife, who is a chiropractor. So I do that. And then we also have an online business with some of my former teammates from the U.S. national team, the Juice Compound. So we put on online content for those that want to follow us, and hopefully it helps them.
Amazing. And well, with all that multiple areas working, how do you find time to work in all of them?
It's really it's a choice, right? This quote came to me not too long ago, and then I share with all of my friends and those that work with me. It's not time management, it's choice management. So because everyone complains of time. Like, I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to exercise. I don't have the time to do X, Y, Z. But if you really looked at what you were doing throughout the day, whether you're on this guy all day, whether, let's say you're spending an hour on Facebook and Instagram, what could you be taking that time and putting it towards something a little bit more productive? So again, choice management, and then having a good lay of the land of what you want to accomplish. So for me, I got on my plate, but these are things that, one, I love to do, and 2, I know will benefit me and my family later on. So, it's a choice.
Great. Choice management. I like the quote. To start with your career, well, a little before your career, how was your life before Taekwondo? What kind of child was you? How was your family? And why did them or you decided to start in Taekwondo?
I'm very blessed and grateful to have a very supportive family. It was my father and my mother are still around. They're doing great. My dad is turning 81 this year. I have an older sister. Great childhood, supportive parents, and very grateful for that, because I know a lot of people don't have that. So I had a really supportive background. I think I was pretty shy as a kid, but I started Taekwondo pretty early, like I think first grade here in the U.S. So I guess I'm 6 or 7. And then they did a demonstration at my school, and I thought it was really cool. So I go to my dad and I was like, "Hey, can I join that? Can I try?" And then I remember a few years into it, I was getting a little bit bored, and I was a red belt. And then my dad said, he goes, "You know what? You finish your black belt, then you can decide what you want to do moving forward." And I think it was an important lesson from that point. Like, you set your goal for something, and if it's still attainable, don't give up just because you're bored, right? Accomplish the task. So when I became a black belt, then a couple of things. I wasn't even heavy into competing. I was competing, but then I started to do like the demonstration team. So like breaking boards in front of people and people clapping for you. And then, so that was cool. And then on top of that, now that you're a black belt, you get to mentor some of the lower belts. So pretty much at that point, I was like, no, this is pretty cool. Like now you're kind of in a leadership position, and a mentoring position, which I think is very important for kids growing up. So from then on, I just started to keep going. So like I said, competing wise, I was okay. I was very athletic, but I would always get second or third place. So I think people need to hit milestones or like have their sights on something to move forward, right? And to accomplish things. And I think when my first gold medal at like a state competition, then your motivation and confidence grows a little bit. And then I think it wasn't until I had medaled at nationals, at junior nationals, I think I got a bronze. I was 13 or something like that. And then I was like, okay, now I need to step this up because I need to beat these other guys around the U.S. So I stepped up my my training at home. By that time, like you start to enter high school and stuff like that, and then it's like, okay, now you have to make a choice. Do you want to hang out with your friends or you want to take this a little bit more serious, right? So like as you go through life, there's always these decisions or forks in the road which help you decide. And I still played like varsity basketball during high school, but it was my coach knew that I was very good at Taekwondo and that would take the priority. So I remember during basketball season, I would always leave during US Open time, February or so, or whatever that is. So like little things stick in my mind where I was like, you're torn as a high school student. Oh, I want to be cool and play basketball in front of the fans, in front of your friends, or I want to travel and then do this. So, so that was like high school. And then in 97, I was 16, 17. I made my first junior national team. So again, confidence. I went to as a freshman in college, I made the collegiate national team. And then in 99, I was 19, I made my first men's national team. So it was like step by step to kind of get there. But with every step, I started to build a little bit more confidence, which made you have to like hyper focus on what you needed to do to improve. So, long story short, that's kind of like the journey.
Great. And how was that, for example, you started just as a child training, enjoying, then you have this certain stage where you enjoyed teaching and sharing with other and being a mentor figure.
Mm-hmm.
But for what you're telling me, you were not hurrying up process. You lived each stage. That was a thing of your parents, a thing of your coaches. Why you didn't start to hurry up and trying to make the national team at 11 or something like that?
I think I don't know. It was weird. Like most kids, when I hear some stories, like they saw the Olympics and then, I wanted to be the Olympian. And then, and I don't think I really had that. I think it was, like I said, I was a shy kid, or you can call it quiet confidence in a sense where it's like for me and in how I improve and get better, like I need to, there has to be a tier to get there. So I rarely get too excited about things. So like a vacation. I'm the type of person like let's say I want to go to Hawaii next year. And then like, are you excited? Hawaii's coming up. I'm like, no. I don't even get excited when I land there. I get excited once I'm in the hotel, I'm set up, right? I don't get too high and I try not to get too low with just with my emotions. So maybe I took that approach through life And I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, kind of. When you were in college, you already were a national team member?
I made it my first year. So when
Yes.
I went to college at UC Berkeley, and at that time, one of the main reasons I went to Berkeley was the coach was 88 Olympic gold medalist from Korea, Dr. Park Bong-kwon. So he was a huge reason I went there. And I think he took me to another level as far as the focus and the repetition and the basics. Taught me how to look at the game a little bit differently. So, but he only was there a year, right? I'm there at 4 years. So what happened? Like basically, he left after 1 year. We brought another instructor in. He was great, but a lot of the responsibility on coaching the team was on me then. Like I basically coached and led the UC Berkeley team then on with the help of certain coaches, but like I led all the trainings. So it was, in a way, it's a lot of, I had the help of some coaches, but a lot of it was self-discovery too. You know, you had to, because you're creating a training plan and this and that. Like, I don't know at that point. All I know is how I feel and what has worked for me in the past. And then when I go to national team, I'll pick some stuff up. Or if we went overseas and you saw the Iranian players doing X, Y, Z and this one and this and that, you're like, huh, that makes sense. So you basically try to take all those pieces together to help the team as much as possible. And our internet back then wasn't like it is now. We didn't have the accessibility that we have now. So, yeah, in a way, it was a good thing for me because I had to self-discover. I had to learn. So, you know, you always have to look at be grateful for things, and I think that situation worked well for me.
Great. So you were like an athlete, a coach, starting as a coach, and a student, because you were in a top university like Berkeley. How was that for you? How did you manage to accomplish those three things?
It was difficult. It was choice management at that point, and again, I'll always go back to the support of my parents. And I remember, I think I got a D in one of my classes. And then I'm coming from being a straight A person in high school and this and that. I was like, oh, this is different. And then I had a World Cup fight off to make the national team again. And then I remember vividly, I went to Colorado Springs. We had a fight off, like the A and B team had a fight off. I won, fortunately. And then afterwards, my dad was like, hey, are you failing a class? And then I was like, how did you know? Basically, a letter was sent back home saying I was below average on the class. I was like, oh, Dad, I actually brought it up to a C something, right? Like a C plus. And then I asked him, I said, how come you didn't ask me about this earlier? He goes, I wanted you to focus on fighting. So, you know, like I had his support. And then as time went on, I learned how to just manage the studies. And like I couldn't, in high school, I barely studied and I got by. But in college and that setting and how competitive is from the educational standpoint, I couldn't. Like you had to study smart and hard. But I learned how to balance the two, fortunately. And then I think I was once asked what was my biggest accomplishment during my Taekwondo years. And then one of them was being able to graduate in 4 years from Berkeley and still be on the national team. Because I know there's not many people that have done it. And especially now in a non-COVID year, like how many times people have to go and travel and fight. It's a very different layout, because back then you had your states, you had your nationals, and then one or two to three big tournaments throughout the year. Like you had World Cup, World Championships, Pan Ams, stuff like that, and it was spread out. But now with the point system, you're like fighting every 2-3 weeks. So logistically, I don't even know how that's possible, for a lot of these people that are in college right now.
Right. You were studying this integrative biology. In your mind was, in 15 years, I will be working for the LA Football Club, or I'm going to have my clinic, or what was in your mind when you were studying that?
I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had a meeting with my counselor. I was always in the biology field. I thought medicine was kind of the thing for me. There was two biology majors. One was molecular cellular biology, and then all the medical students went that route. And then the integrative was a little bit more like, okay, kinesiology and biology and anatomy and physiology. It was a little bit more spread out, and I felt I needed a little bit more of that to help me decide where to go. And I'm a very visual person, so like I can see motion. But if you're telling me to look at cells and stuff I have to look under a microscope, it's like a different side of my brain that I just don't care for as much. So that's kind of the reason why I went that route. And then I sat with my counselor, and I think at that time I had a pretty decent knee injury, and I was going to physical therapy. I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. Like, you're getting me back to what I want to do. I get to interact with you. I get to build a relationship with you. Because you're spending up to an hour or more with your physio, where if you're going to see a doctor or like the surgeon, you're with him for 5 to 7 minutes, right? So I thought having more time allowed me to, in the future, would allow me to kind of go in that direction. So.
Great. Going a little back to your Taekwondo career, I would like to know what was your first international competition representing the USA? How was that feeling of having your double with the USA letters and representing your country?
First men's national team was collegiate or men's or world?
The first time, even if you were youth, that you are outside the United States representing your country.
So outside, so 97 was my first junior national team. And we didn't actually travel out of the US. We had the Mexican junior national team come to Colorado Springs. So we basically had a week or 10 long day camp co-training thing, but we fought like it was a tournament and every day. And I was like, okay, that was my first taste of, okay, this is what it feels like to be prideful, because the Mexican athletes, you could see like how the camaraderie amongst them, and then belief at the time they all kind of live together and this and that, where the U.S. national team just comes from everywhere. And then we had to build that relationship there. We didn't already have it in a sense. In 98, with the collegiate national team, I was in, I think it was Manzanillo, Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
So we had collegiate nationals there. And again, it's a different feeling. You're representing the U.S. International stage. I didn't medal at that one. I think, but the biggest one is probably my men's national team. So 99 World Championships in Edmonton. First fight was with Jesper Rosen from Denmark, who had just won the European Championships. And again, I'm 19. I don't know, like this and that. And then I think I was down, but in the third round, I hit him in the face and I was up 1. I was like, holy crap. Like I'm actually won. I could actually win this, and I ended up losing. Again, it was a whirlwind because I was 19, my first national team. I'm fighting Jesper, and I'm fighting the first day of the tournament. So like all these things put together, and again, it was a good experience. I had confidence from that fight because I was like, wow, I hung with this guy. He's a great fighter. And then, but I also watched the other fights of the tournament. I got to see it live, and you got to see the quality of some of these top level players are like, wow, I still have a lot I need to improve. But the fact that I kept up with this guy means I may have that ability to do so. So that was a pretty cool experience.
Amazing. And you continue participating. You have 2 World Cup medals of that amazing career in international level. What is the most meaningful experiences that you have that you remember gladly?
Mm-hmm. There's a lot, I would say, and so like to build on the World Championships. The next year we had 2000 World Cup in Lyon, France, and so we had the 2000 Olympic trials coming up, and I never even thought that was going to be a thing for me. I was happy to make the U.S. national team. So, but in 2000, we go to Lyon, and then I pull Jesper Rosen first fight again. I was like, okay, not bad. And then like, I think I fought Tommy Mollett from Netherlands, and then semifinal was Francisco Zas from Spain, and Francisco was at the time big time, and then I was able to beat him, and the final I lost Bibak from Iran. So I think just based on that, I was like, I think I'm doing pretty good right now. I'm fighting some top level players. So does this mean I could potentially rival Steven Lopez at 2000 trials? So that kind of helped me build my confidence a bit. Unfortunately, I lost the Olympic trials, but again, everything's a stepping stone. Not too high, not too low. Just kind of build that confidence over time. But I think for me as a fighter and just my confidence as a person, probably that World Cup 2000 kind of boosted me to the next level.
Amazing. And when you were during your career as an athlete, you were studying also your college career. Did you, after you finished college, you retired from Taekwondo, or you continue with your only focusing on your sport career?
When I left Berkeley in 2002, I moved to Colorado Springs. So I trained full time at the Olympic Training Center for 2 years until the 2004 Olympic time. I didn't make the 2004 Olympic team. The U.S. took the division above and below me. And basically so at the time, it's basically me and Mark Lopez are the top featherweights. And because of the point system and this and that, they ended up taking the division welter and fin fly. So I moved up to welter to try to fight that one. I did okay, but it just wasn't my weight category. And then I was contemplating stopping at that point. I was like, okay, my ultimate goal was to make the Olympics. I didn't make it. Let me just chill for a year because I was going to go back to school, to physical therapy school at some point, 2005 or so. And then sitting around for a month, not doing anything, you just drive yourself crazy. And I ended up fighting another year on a national team. I moved up to lightweight. So my last competition was 2005 Worlds in Spain, Madrid. So after that point, I decided I knew that was my last competition. At that point, I was like, okay, I'm gonna focus on going to physiotherapy school.
Great. And once you retired from competition, you started to work in this physiotherapy area. You have worked in such amazing places like Pittsburgh Steelers, the Soleil. Can you share us? First, I would love to know, how did you choose those places to work? Why? And what have you learned from working there?
So I went to school, physical therapy school in St. Louis. I chose St. Louis, one, because of the program, and it was a very movement-based curriculum. And I say movement-based when, like, if you're examining a knee, I can examine, like, orthopedic is like very like, I'm gonna look at the knee, is this ligament done, and is it the meniscus, XYZ. In a movement-based kind of curriculum, I look at the knee, but I also look at how you're moving, how you're squatting, how you're jumping, how you're doing all these things, and then what inefficiencies there are related to why your knee is hurting. You know, so if your knee hurts, you could put ice and cream or whatever you want on it and make it feel better. But if you don't address the ankle, the foot, the hip, and all those kind of things, the knee pain is just going to come back. And I was introduced to this style from a friend. He was also a Taekwondo friend, but he went to this school. And then he was like, "Look, Jason, you have to go. It's a no-brainer. It's the new way of thinking." So I ended up going there. It was a great experience. I'm in the Midwest, different surroundings. People are different. So it was a great experience. And then after that, I went to Pittsburgh. I did a sports residency at the University of Pittsburgh. So with that residency, I was able to intern with the Steelers and then stay on as a consultant. I think it was a good experience. It was a hard experience because there's a lot to do. But on top of that, you got to see what professional sports is like. And then taking it to an NFL experience makes it even top level, even more on top of that. So understanding that there is politics wherever you go, and then how to navigate amongst that politics. But at the end of the day, what doesn't change is the relationship and the trust you build with an athlete. Right? So as a Taekwondo athlete, we had athletic trainers, and I still have a great relationship with Trish Bear Grounds. And then she's always been a mentor to me till this day. And then not only in the medical field, but also as a friend. So like a lot of the athletes that I've worked with at the Steelers or Cirque du Soleil or even here at the club now, like I'm legitimately friends with, because we've built a relationship on trust, number one. And then the whole medical stuff is always secondary. So with Pittsburgh, yeah, it was great experience. Lots of fans, lots of lights, lots of pressure, lots of contact injuries, and learning how to, one, treat the athlete, but again, like the politics, like how do you work this one into the situation? How do you work? Because there's different disciplines that are trying to help this one athlete get back onto the field. So not only helping the athlete, but being able to communicate with these other disciplines to make it all work. And then so after the Steelers, I moved back to California to be near family. And I ended up with Cirque du Soleil for about 2+ years. And what I learned was the difference between team and individual sport. Because like Taekwondo, yeah, it's an individual sport. And then you go to team football, and then you go to performing arts. So the biggest critic, if you talk to a performing artist or a dancer, an acrobat or something, Their biggest critic is themselves. It's a different type of drive, because if you're performing on stage and let's say they miss a trick or they wobble a little bit, the crowd doesn't see it. They see it. They know it. So I learned a lot about just a different intrinsic type of motivation. And I think that I was able to connect with them on this level because as a Taekwondo athlete, I had the same kind of mentality. I used to beat myself up like, oh, that moment and this and that. So I was able to connect with them on a personal level, but then you bring the expertise of movement. And like, for instance, like you have a contortionist that bends like their back like crazy, but don't get sucked into watching it so much because you're just in awe. They're like, oh, that's so cool. But from the medical standpoint, you had to break it down into its components. Don't let things sway my decisions. And I'm like, okay, like this is limited right here. I have to target that. And then when you do it, he or she has less back pain when doing these crazy things. But I think it's, like I said, it's like now it's an individual kind of performing arts sport, and learning how to target that person. And then the other thing amongst Cirque du Soleil is that you have people from different countries. You had the Russians, you had the Chinese, you had the Eastern Europeans, you had the Americans, and then each one has a different idea or approach to training, approach to getting hurt, approach to, like, I don't want to see Jason because all he's going to do is take me out of the show. Right? So it's like, no. I'm just trying to trust. I'm trying to build trust with you because ultimately, if you continue to get worse, you will be out of the show. But can we bridge the gap a little bit where you work on the things that I think you need to work on? We may have to modify the show where you don't do a certain trick, and then you have to go to the artistic director, and then they have to like, okay, we have to change the music and this and that. There's a lot of moving parts, but it just showed how important the medical personnel were to the accomplishment of this whole show. So again, it's being part of a team and learning how to communicate in that manner.
Amazing. And for what you tell me, with Pittsburgh Steelers, also with the Soleil, when I ask you what did you learn, you go more than technical things, just to the human relation in Steelers, the human relation in the Soleil, and I guess that is now very important for you as a physio with your patients in your clinic, and also with the LA Football Club.
Yeah, I think that throughout this whole journey, my physio skills have improved. From a hands-on perspective and how to diagnose XYZ. And then I think that's just a given because people love, like, if you're a physical therapist, you should love to want to get better at these things. But it's like the 80-20 rule. I don't, maybe physio is the 80% and then the connection is the 20%, or maybe vice versa. I don't know. But they have to work together to get people better, faster, and as safe as possible. Because if you don't have the two, it's just not going to work. It's not a surgeon. You're not a surgeon where you don't talk to the guy, and then you're on an anesthesia and you're under anesthetics. You're out, and they just fix your knee. It's not that. It's you're working with someone that's trying to get you to do something that's uncomfortable, right? And it's like, and then some people don't want to push. Some people want to push too much. So how do you read this situation? Because if they do too much, they're going to flare themselves up. They're going to get hurt more. They're not going to trust you. They might go to someone else that's not good. Or, there's a lot of things that happen that can take place. So you want to make sure that first contact with that person is a good one. And then, the technical skills are always trying to improve, and and researching, again, different skills, different diagnostic techniques, different taking it a little bit more holistic too, of not just mechanical, but also looking at other factors. So like even if you look at this year alone and why maybe some people have a harder time recovering from injuries, pandemic, COVID, fear, no real competitions coming up. So it's like, how do you have that motivation to get to it? Are they eating right? Are they eating like crap? Are they not sleeping the way that they're supposed to? Because I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna stay up late. I can wake up late. It's like all those little things you kind of have to take into consideration when someone is trying to rehab, or maybe someone's not healing the way that you expected them to. Right? So why in this situation? Or this guy is healing fast. Why? It's not just him, it's the situation. So like and at least here in the club, if let's say, I'll put it into Taekwondo like language. So like let's say you fight one tournament every month, and then someone tears their hamstring during training. So where was it in the training cycle? Was it right after the competition? Was it midway during the competition? Or was it right before the competition? So based on that, you can diagnose, was it an overtraining? Was it an undertraining? What did we do specifically during this time? Right? So I can heal the injury, but we want it to come back as good as possible. And then if you're like, okay, it was an overtraining thing, and then we look back at it, okay, how did we overtrain this guy? Were there too many sprints, too many speed drills, too many Hogu drills, too many paddle drills, right? You can really diagnose injuries by looking at what it is in the training. So like, let's say it's a hamstring injury. If you're doing more paddle drills, because you're swinging through in a sense, you should chamber and this and that, but it's a lot more eccentric stress on the hamstring versus when you hit a Hogu, it stops. Right? So when you look back, and when I look back into my own training, I didn't understand this stuff. I just knew I mixed up paddles and shields and Hogus. And I maybe had one hamstring injury in my whole career. So it's like, okay, maybe that makes sense. So if you extrapolate and you take that information and then you're trying to help someone program their training, maybe that's something we kind of keep in mind. And then I think if people are training top level athletes, you need to have that ability. So, okay, it was a 5-day training cycle, and then this is, these are what we're going to stress on these days. I'm going to have full contact fighting on these days. I'm going to have light sparring on these days. If you can kind of build that ahead of time and have it like on paper, and then you see how the athlete performs. Wow, this guy's crisp. This guy's clean. Or by the end of the week, he's dragging. Okay, if he's dragging, we're like, okay, what do we have to change earlier in the week so he can last? Or what does that person have to do from a strength and conditioning standpoint to fill in the gaps? Okay, why is he tired at the end of the week? His overall aerobic volume's not good, or this and that. So how do we supplement it with runs or bikes and this and that? So you can really deep dive into all of this stuff. And the thing is not to overdo it, but to still have an idea that it's there. Don't disregard it, because the old school is like, okay, just keep kicking. The new school is too many charts, too many of this. So I think the happy medium is the way to kind of get the athlete, because at least with football, what we track a lot is how much they run, the speed, the distance, the accelerations, the decelerations, the profile, that the it's like a metric profile on this athlete. But we also have to look at what kind of athlete. Is this guy a really powerful guy? Is he really good aerobically? So we've kind of put all those things together in order to come up with the number one best training plan. But also, if the guy gets hurt, how do we get him or her back to the optimal state? And I always look at the rehab process of getting you stronger, than filling the gaps and getting you stronger and improving on the things that you weren't good at, because it affords me a little time. Let's say you're not able to run, but I can get you as strong as I can possible without injuring you, focusing on the right things. So when you come back, I'm like, holy crap, I feel stable. I'm more explosive. I have more flexibility here. So I go on rambles when I talk about the technical stuff, but it's a very, and to be able to look at both sides of the coin, of the performance side, the medical side, the human side, and then put it together to optimize the athlete.
Talking about Taekwondo, considering that human body didn't evolve to do Taekwondo, we do a lot of high kicks. What can coaches do in general terms, or some guidelines? What can athletes and coaches can do to avoid long-term damage? Or maybe you can say me, well, you are a high performance athlete, you will have it, and there's nothing you can do about it.
I think injuries will happen, but we try to decrease them, mitigate them as much as possible. And I would say the number one thing to focus on is mobility and flexibility, especially for Taekwondo. Mobility and flexibility in the right places, such as your hips, and then stability of the core or the low back area. Those are the main things, because everything builds off of that when we're trying to generate power and whatnot. The other thing is, the game has changed a little bit, where it's a lot of front leg kicking and flicking and that kind of stuff. So I think having a little bit of knowledge of the biomechanics is important. So like if I'm kicking all day with my right leg in front, my focus is not just the right leg, it's the stability of my left leg. That's the one that's on the ground. How do you pivot on this bottom leg so you can get your pelvis to shift so your leg can go up, so you're not always pinching, right? If you're pinching into the front of your hip every time you're kicking, you're creating some type of trauma, and ultimately you may have some damage. So having knowledge of that. The other part is, it's not only about the technique. Let's say a technique looks good, but where do you feel it? Right? So it's like, if we simplify, okay, I'm doing a squat, and I do a squat, and then you ask me, where do I feel it? Oh, I feel it in my calves. I'm not supposed to feel it in my calves. I'm supposed to feel it in my glutes, my hamstrings, my quads. So just because it looks right doesn't mean your muscles are firing the right way. So if you're kicking all day, I feel in front of my hip, front of my right hip, front of my right hip, we have some issues. So then kind of becomes a deep dive. I was like, okay, where am I supposed to feel it? So that's when I think coaches and trainers need to not only dive into their students' techniques, but dive into their own techniques. Like when I still do, when I was starting as a physio, I was working out all day, working on the same things. Like, what am I feeling here? And if I don't feel it here, what do I need to do to get myself to feel it? What verbal cues, what visual cues do I need resistance to pull me in a certain way to get these things to fire? And I think if you have a good plan where you work on mobility of let's say your hips. You work on stability of your low back. You integrate that into a good warm-up or activation session prior to training, right? You get your body ready to do it, and then you work on some cool down things that specifically get those areas to calm down a bit. And I think that is the smart way to do it versus back in the day, all you did was static stretching. You talk to your friends and you start moving around and then you start, right? That was just the thing. So how can we make it a little bit smarter? So my long-winded answer to that question.
Excellent, amazing, great answer. And having been an elite athlete, and now that you have worked with many elite level athletes of different sports in the rehab area, many athletes, or it's something that kind of happens. Some athletes cannot recover from certain injury, or we sometimes say, oh, after that it's not the same. What are the keys you consider that are very important to recover from a big injury?
Well, I think it's understanding that one of the biggest risks to an injury is a previous injury. So we want to make sure that the current injury at hand is taken care of as thoroughly as possible. At the same time, not neglecting the other areas as well. So let's say someone tears their ACL. Yeah, we're working on getting that knee straight and bent and the quad firing and whatnot. But why did that injury happen in the first place? Let's say it was a non-contact injury. So like the person was just moving back and it just went. So why did that happen? Are the hips not working? The ankle's not working? We can target those right now because the knee's injured, not the hip or the ankle. So if we can retrain the body early, once they start to step and walk and squat again, those systems are already in a better place. They're not going to be the best, but they're in a better place. And that's how you start to see some people recover in 3 or 4 months, and these that take 9 to 12 months. And I think those are some of the keys. Some people heal a little bit faster as well. So it's taking that into consideration. Just because your knees hurt doesn't mean you can't do glute exercises. You can't do ankle exercises. You can't do core exercises. Because some people, they're in such amount of pain that like, oh, just strap some ice on there. I'll kind of move it and this and that. I was like, no. What do you want? I want to get better faster and this and that. I was like, well, at this rate, it's going to be tough. So you make a decision. I won't push you to do the things you don't want to do. I need you to understand. So it's like, okay, no, I want to get better. I was like, okay, then put your big boy pants on, and then let's do these things that you don't want to do, because I know ultimately it's going to get you better. So I think, so recovering from a major injury, it's those are the kind of like little things that I think are missed sometimes. And even how to integrate them into more functional things. So like running, jumping, kicking. In most physiotherapy, like an outside clinic, they just get you to the bare minimum where you can walk, you can squat. And you're like, okay, go try playing. And I was like, what happened to the stability with jumping? What happened to the power? What happened to these things? Because those need to be integrated too. And to work closely with whoever the coach is. Okay, what's the training? Because you can't go from 0 to 100. But what does 30% look like? What does 50% look like? What does 70% look like? And it's like, how do you even build that into a rehab process? Because everyone wants to kick right away. Everyone wants to move lateral right away. Probably not the best idea with ACL. So maybe you're doing more linear things. So what linear drills can this person do in training? Where can you integrate them earlier on so they're back with the team, back in that environment? So now mentally they're in a good place. Because you can do speed drills linear. I just may not have you turn or doubles or whatever it is. But that's why I think having someone that understands the sport and the progressions to get to the final product of hitting a chest protector or a head as hard as you can and flicking your leg like that, there's a process to get there. So I think you need to find someone that's skilled in that manner to bridge that gap.
Great. And working with, you also have your clinic, working with normal people, do you think you still have to do this progression, but not taking to that high level of kicking?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just healing and then knowing what they want to get back to. And if they're a weekend athlete and they want to get back to playing basketball, we will build the steps to get there. If you're an older individual that wants to just be able to pick up your grandchildren off the floor, we'll get you to do that. But that's going to teach you how to squat. That's going to teach you how to get up and down off a chair and even get off the floor if you're a fall risk and all those kind of things. So it's really knowing what the end product is and getting them to understand the work that it'll take to get to that end product. Because it's like, okay, like I can help you, but I can't do all of it for you. So, it's just having that conversation with them.
And what do you do when people don't want to do the hard work to recover? In case mainly normal people, not athletes. Sometimes we want quick solutions, painless. What strategies do you do to convince them of recovering?
Well, I think it's just having an honest conversation. And like if you want to rely on pain pills or you want to rely on the cortisone injection, stuff like that, that's cool. It's your body, it's not mine. But if you want long lasting kind of relief, unfortunately, but fortunately, these are the steps that we need to get there. And if you decide to go the easy route, I would just don't be surprised that this comes back in 2 to 3 months. And then at that point, I'm still here to help you regardless, but I can't do a miracle for you. I'm not going to even promise I can do a miracle for you. But if you want to do these steps, then the chances of you getting better are higher. And let's say you don't want to do all the steps. What are you willing to do? I'm willing to do 20%. I'm giving you 5 exercises. I'm only going to do 2. I was like, okay, we'll start there. Because 2 is better than none. And once you start to get better, you can start to reassess your motivation. Are you the type that goes like, oh, I'm actually getting better. I want to get more better because this feels pretty good. So maybe I'll start to do more of what Jason is asking me to do. Or you're the type that, oh, I'm fine with this. Okay, that's fine too. But at least in my mind is that I've helped you. And it's kind of up to you on how much you want me to help you. Because you may not just be ready. You may not be ready yet. So.
Great. So it's the same. You are doing small steps.
Yeah, I guess that's the that's the theme of it. Small steps.
Excellent. Now that you work in this rehab area, you work also in sports performance. Is there an area that you are of knowledge nowadays that you are curious about in sport performance or in rehab area?
I really like. Now that I'm here with the LA Football Club, it's when you're in a clinical setting, you might see someone once, 2, 3 times a week. Like here in this setting, I see them pretty much every day. I'm in contact, phone, and it's just like it's a different animal, right? Because in pro sports, they're trying to get the person back as fast and as safe as possible. So I get to see every little change. So when I'm in this setting, my brain kind of works a little differently, where I track every little thing. And it may not even be a big thing. But when we look back at the season, I was like, kind of like what I was alluding to before, like, what is the scenario to this person getting hurt? When did they get hurt? It was in a training cycle, it was in a game, was it contact, was it non-contact? Was it, we've had 3 back-to-back games? Or let's say you're fighting Taekwondo tournaments, like I fought every weekend for the last month. So let's say your body starts to break down, then you start to make bigger plans. Okay, when you're scheduling out your next tournament schedule, I know back to back to back to back is going to break me. So what do I need to do? I have to be smart about my decisions on which ones to go to, and how to better prepare my body for those things. Because it makes no sense to go to be hurt at all these competitions because you're not going to do well. You just wasted your time and your money. So how am I going to be smarter about my decisions moving forward? So I think it's just optimizing the decision-making process on what to do from a scheduling standpoint, what to do right away after an injury. So like in the acute phase, so like the first 3 to 5 days, what has worked for me in the past? What has worked for this particular athlete? What has worked for the athletes, whether they're a defensive player, midfielder, a forward, right? So even if because they have different profiles. Your midfielder runs a lot less than your outside backs versus your wingers, stuff like that in football. An easy one is like, okay, let's say you have a striker and you have a goalie. You're not going to do a bunch of sprint drills with your goalie. It's just different. So even Taekwondo-wise, if you know what kind of profile this athlete has, is it more of a defensive fighter, front leg fighter, very dynamic, this and that, then you can actually build the rehab program to cater to that movement profile. But also from the performance standpoint, talking to the athlete and saying, what things do you think you would need to improve on in your game? Talking to the coach, if you could improve something on this athlete, what would you want to improve? And then from the medical and the strength and conditioning standpoint, is this something you can actually change? So you have all these minds coming together to create a plan. And then I like to think that I'm pretty good at helping decide like if that's even possible or not. And then if it is possible, coming up with a strategic plan to even get there.
Excellent. Great. Now you have this project, the Joyce Compound. Can you tell us about it? What is the Joyce Compound and what kind of athletes you work with?
I don't know how many years ago. Probably like 7 years ago. Tim Thackeray and Anthony Graff, we were texting each other, and I was like, hey, let's start putting content. And then, oh no, Tim actually started the Juice Compound Facebook site and then added me as an administrator or whatnot. I was like, what is this thing? Like, what does it even mean? He was like, I don't know. So we just started putting stuff together. And then, because back then, not many people put out content, but I think a lot of martial artists, specifically Taekwondo athletes, because we were in Taekwondo. Tim and Tony have a niche in CrossFit as well. So we kind of had these two populations start to watch our stuff. So we've done a lot of things. We've done like remote coaching. We've done kids fitness programs. We've done different online programs, and it's evolved over time. Tim's heavily into the remote coaching side. I was originally, but just because of limits and time, I don't have much anymore. But the ultimate thing is to help people, is to give them some knowledge that they may not have gotten otherwise, like in our generation. And even now, like looking at it from Like you can interview another physical therapist, but I think just my past in it and then my the little nuances from looking at it from an athlete change it a little bit. So at least moving forward with the juice, at least personally, I want to develop like online basically training programs as far as from a rehab standpoint. So how to prevent back injuries, how to prevent hamstring injuries, how to prevent knee injuries, so like I alluded to earlier, like how do you build this mobility, flexibility, warm-up program for people that are getting a lot of hamstring injuries? How do you build that into your training program? And you can either go to physiotherapy school or go to medical school or whatever and try to learn it all, or you can just watch my video and then like take what makes sense. So that I think that is, I don't know if it's a short-term project. I've wanted to do it for a while, but I think personally that's my next step in trying to help the community and kind of further not only prevent injuries, but keep them functioning at a high level as much as possible. So that's kind of, I guess, my synopsis of the juice.
Great, excellent. And I want to know also, you are giving remote consultation. I watched a video when you were talking about some kind of you changed your business approach of your clinic, I think. It's and I want to know in what consists your remote consultation program, and if you can talk us a little about it.
Yeah, I did that during COVID. And because the club, basically all the athletes had to stay at home, I had to, so I was working with them remotely. I was like, oh, this reminds me of my juice compound days. And then even at my office, I closed the office for a month during the initial shutdown. So I was like, how can I continue to help, but I had some time. So I believe it was a 6-week mentorship I did with like 8 to 10 people. And it was a really cool experience. Basically, I had 8 to 10 people, and they were like, some were high level athletes, some were in their mid 40s and they've dealt with all these injuries in the past and stuff. So there was no cookie cutter solution. But we met every week via Zoom, came up with a program, and then we built on that every week. So that was kind of what we did during that time. I don't know if there will ever be an opportunity for me to do that again. Hopefully not, because of COVID. So that's why I came up with the idea to come up with these knee pain, hamstring issues, hip issues, basically an online class that would basically work itself by itself. So it was a great experience to do. It was very time consuming, but I had the time to do it, and I'm super grateful to the athletes that did it. And I learned that I missed Taekwondo because I got to talk about it. I got to, like, we would do the examination, we would go through some correctives, but then I would step back from the camera. I was like, okay, well, let me watch you kick. And I would go into coaching mode. I was like, kick. So was it, let's say you're kicking a front leg fast kick to a shield or a heavy bag. It doesn't look right to me. What do you feel? I feel sluggish. When? How are you taking off? How are you pushing off? Blah, blah, blah. So I'm coaching it from an instructor standpoint. But I go, and let's say I just coach it from a verbal standpoint. I'm like, okay, push off a little bit here. And then you see, oh, wow, the trajectory is a little better. The snap is a little bit better. But then I'm like, okay, what exercise would correlate to that push off? So like, okay, front leg fast kick drill. Are you actually pushing off the back leg? How's the angle of your knee and your hip? So if that looks good, and I know I can change it, I was like, now it becomes a decision-making standpoint from my part. What exercise should I give this week? Okay, let's give a lateral squat. We're squatting at that angle, and then progress them, squat to a push, and then go. Right? So if you look online of, okay, they're stepping on this box and stepping off of it and then kicking and this and that, they're all good drills, but they may not be tailored exactly to what that specific athlete needs. It's a good drill. But again, how much are you doing? Do they have the basics to do it? Can they even do a lateral squat first, clean, before throwing agility and power on top of it? If you can't, you're probably messing yourself up. And you're doing it over and over and over again because it's a cool drill, and then coach wants you to do more and more because I saw it on Facebook. It looks cool. And then the person ends up with some ankle impingement or a sprained ankle or plantar fasciitis or medial knee pain, whatever it is. And then someone will ask me, what do you think about the drill? I'm like, my question is, drill looks cool, but who's doing it? Who's coaching it? Is the person ready for it? Those are the things to dive into a little bit deeper if you want to optimize the program for that person. Sorry, that was my long, I get on tangents.
Amazing.
Like that.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, now we're gonna move to some smaller questions that I ask for every guest. Are you okay with it?
Yeah, I'll try my best.
Thank you. Well, do you have any purchase of less than $100 that has most positively impacted your life in the last 6 months? You can be as specific as you want.
I started reading a little bit more the past few months. Probably the last 2 books. The last one I finished was It was the story of the CEO of Nike.
Okay.
I think
Phil Knight.
Shoe Dog. Yeah, Shoe Dog. Great book. Because I have a business coach, and a lot of what I learned from the business side for my office relates to just personal development. So looking at Phil Knight's story and how you look at, oh, wow, Nike's this huge company, but how it started, the stuff that he went through, the hardships, almost going bankrupt, all those kind of things. It's like, wow, this guy can push through. It's because he had a vision. So I thought that was a really cool story, and then it was very well written, so it's easy to read. Right now, I'm reading the subtle art of not giving a F, and I think that one's really good. It's basically, how do you shift your mind into a instead of being a victim of every circumstance, how do you move forward? How do you make the most of things? And I think the pandemic really tested a lot of people. And of course, we're all scared, and from the health standpoint, but also scared from the business standpoint. I have to close this thing. It's not only my business, but I have 8, 9 people I need to feed and their families. So it's not just me. It affects a lot more people. So how do you take that situation and turn it so it's in your favor? Right? It's hard to do. I would say most people don't know how to do that. But personally, how do you do that? So and that's my current book. So long story short, spend money on like some personal development, because how you are personally is how you're going to run everything externally, right? If my family and my mind is not intact, how can I be a good leader at my clinic? How can I be a good leader to my athletes if I'm always just worrying about X, Y, Z? I can't. You can fake it, but it's going to burn you pretty bad in the long run, I think. So I'd say that's my under $20.
Yeah, quite cheap. Do you have any specific failure, maybe a favorite one that set you up for later success?
I thought when I was thinking about this question, I thought of there's a lot of failures, but when we're looking at pivotal moments, maybe when it comes to Taekwondo, my last fight, 2005 Worlds, I was on fire. I was doing well, and then I fought Japan in the quarters, and I thought it was going to. I thought it was going to be easier, but obviously when you have that mentality and you don't take it as serious, it bites you back in the butt sometimes. And that went into an overtime, sudden death kind of thing. He scored on me on something I've never get scored on, and I was like, wow, okay. So basically, that was a moment where I knew my career was done. It didn't end on a high, obviously. So what do? I can either like lament on it and like, man, this could have been XYZ. And it's very easy to do. Like I can even look back now, like, man, I should have XYZ. But I just moved forward. I knew I was done. The next day I was like, I'm done cutting weight. I'm just gonna do push-ups. I'm gonna start drinking protein. Like I want to get jacked or whatever it was. Like, but I put myself towards a goal pretty much right away. And I think that was a good moment for me to, it happens. You can complain for a little bit, but get over it and then move forward. So I hope that spearheaded me towards my professional career where, okay, like, again, I had been out of school for over 3 years before I went back to physiotherapy school. So, but my discipline was always there. I could take it into a different realm. Whatever you put me in, I think I can succeed. And I going back to Tim and Tony at the Juice Compound, when I first opened up my business, I was renting a room in the back of a gym. So I was seeing clients, I was doing this, I had a business. And then they were pushing me and my brother-in-law, my sister, everyone was like pushing my wife and I to open up our own facility. I was like, no, I have a business and this and that. And then they're all like, you don't have a business. I was like, what do you mean? I see clients, I make money. I was like, can you step away? I'm like, no, because if I step away, no money comes in. So it's like, you have to open up your business. I was like, I don't know, and this and that. And I think it was Tim and Tony where we had a Juice Compound event, and they said to me, you're Jason Hahn. You don't fail. I was like, okay, I'll do it. That was all I needed. But I was like, you need good friends. You need motivation. And they're the ones that understand your DNA even better than you sometimes. And it's just like, okay, this is just me. This is my DNA. This was what I'm meant to be. I'm meant to succeed. And whatever situation you put me in, I will succeed. And if I fail in the short term, I'm going to find a way to succeed. So, I think that, again, that was one fork in the road where I could have chosen to be lazy, or I could have chosen to take just the mentality and keep going in a different direction. So, yeah, 2005 Worlds, losing in overtime.
If you could have a gigantic billboard that anybody in the world could see, which message would you put on in? A message for the whole world?
The message would be, everyone dies, but not everyone lives. And that would, my brother-in-law passed away a little bit over 2 years ago of cancer. Young, like 43, I believe, 43, 44. My sister, 3 kids, so, but the 2.5 years that he dealt with cancer, he basically took that philosophy. Like he lived every day and enjoyed every day. And I look, again, I probably didn't appreciate as much during that time, but when I look back, at what he had done and how he had lived, and just how strong and like mentally my sister is, and the kids. It's he instilled that kind of mentality in them, and I still think today that they still live that. Like they miss and they love their father. I miss my brother, but we try to learn from every situation. We take that situation and then we take it, we learn from it. So like pandemic hits, like, oh, my business, oh, I'm losing money. Oh, I was like, hey, but I'm alive. My brother's not. So how do I take that and then turn it into positive energy where like I still have the ability to grind, to meet people, to talk to people and this and that, then take it. It's just you only live once. You don't know when you're going to be around, when you may not be around anymore. So
Thank you, Jason. In the last 5 years, what new behavior, habit, or skill has most improved your life?
I think it's like that choice management thing. I think and the business. So I've been in my current practice maybe about 6 years now, or 5.5 years now. And then when we first started the practice, it was just my wife and I. No front desk, no nothing. And at that time, you're just grinding and just working hard. You're working 10, 12 hours a day. You're making okay money and you're surviving. But what was the end to this? Am I just going to do this every day the rest of my life? Because I physically can't sustain that. Then you start to look up to people that you want to be like, or that are in situations like, oh, what is he or she doing? So that's when I invested in a business coach for my practice. So he's helped me create systems and how to scale the business and even how to hire people and all those kind of things. But underlying all of those things is your personal development. Because if you're not in a good state, how am I supposed to lead? How am I supposed to help? I can't. As I'm a hypocrite if I don't lead my life in a good way and I'm asking you to do so. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So I think, one, having a strategy to do things, but also having the determination and choice to fulfill those things are what I think I've improved in over the last 5 years. And you can even, again, we're intrinsically, like, I'm a fighter. Like, I'm quick, right? It's like, you come at me, I'm going to come back at you right away. But life doesn't work that way. It just, you can't get along with people. You can't get someone to join your team if you have that mentality all the time. I get it, one-on-one fighting, but to work in a cohesive manner, it doesn't work that way. So I think that's a big thing I've learned, and then just being able to calm down a little bit, step back a little bit, enjoy things a little bit more. Probably that's only happened this last year, but I think that's something that I've improved in the last 5 years.
Excellent. Very related. What is the best investment you've ever made?
Best investment. I'd probably say the personal development side. And again, it's like, yeah, my wife, my family, investing in that, but also in order to make the relationship work and being a good parent, you still have to improve yourself. You have to make time for yourself. You have to, even though like for instance, here's my schedule. I sleep at 9 p.m. I wake up at 4 a.m. And then I just had to do it just because of the circumstances. Because in the morning when the kids are asleep, it's pretty much the only time I have alone time. Right? So I'm like 4 to 6:30 or whatnot, it's just me and my thoughts. And one, to get things done, but two, you need to be quiet to be creative, to look at big term plans, stuff like that. Once the kids wake up, you're in daddy mode, and then go straight to the soccer club. After I'm done with the soccer club, go straight to the office, and then coming home, being with the family and being present with the family, and then going to sleep, right? Because the old me, and I still do, don't get me wrong, it's just like I'm working all day long. And then it's not good for a relationship. It's not good for trying to be present for your kids and stuff like that. So I would say the best investment is myself, and just realizing what's important to me. Like, yeah, the business, yeah, my athletes, and my family. So how do you make time? How do you sacrifice certain things to make it all work? And when I was sleeping late and still waking up at 4 or 5, I was only getting like 4 or 5 hours of sleep. I would suffer because I felt like crap. And then you gain weight, you get sick, you get all those things. I'm like, you know what? I need to be in a better state. So I need to find a way to make it work. And I need to communicate that with my wife and my family. Hey, this is what I think I need. Can we make this work? So, yeah, I think that's the investment, I guess.
What do you do from 4 a.m. to 6:30?
I write in my journal. That's right, my journal. So every day I write in my journal. Basically, I start with my 3 grateful statements. Something you're grateful for yesterday, something you're grateful for today, and just like a random what you're grateful for. I put in like a quote. I don't really change my quote. It's that everyone dies, but not everyone lives. And then just the focus. My usual, what I write for my focus is discipline, plan, execution. So it's just a reminder. They're basically trigger words of affirmation, those kind of things. And then I go into my day of, okay, for LA Football Club, Health Fit, family. I write my priorities for each category. I have my tasks. My tasks, so like am I taking my supplements? Am I doing this? And they all have check boxes. So there's something very powerful about writing. We're so used to writing on this thing all day. It's too easy. You need to, again, you don't need to, but personally, it really helps me refocus every day, every morning to what I want to accomplish during the day. And at the end of the day, I look at it, I'm like, okay, what didn't I accomplish? Why didn't I accomplish it? Is this something I can do tomorrow? Basically, we all need structure. And again, even during the pandemic, people just at home watching TV all day. And or athletes, the pandemic was the best test to what kind of athlete are you? Because when 2021 comes around, the ones that were succeeding in early 2020, are they the same ones in 2021? And it'd be interesting to look at the ones that did succeed and the ones that didn't, and then go back to what had happened to them starting in March. What was this trajectory? What was going on here? So everyone says you have to practice like you're going to play, or practice like how you're going to fight. It's the same thing within this year. And then it's never too late. We're still in a pandemic. So what do you need to do to change? Maybe you don't need to change, but what can you do to refine your processes to improve the chances of you being successful? So.
Excellent. What advice would you give to a 23-year-old who has finished college about how is the real world?
Rough. No, I think it's kind of like I said, main thing is to add some structure and to have something to go to next, to have a goal. Because if you don't have a destination, you're just gonna like do random stuff, which is like some people like after college, like they want to travel the world for a month, 3 months, 6 months, or whatever before you start. That's good. You have a plan. This is your strategy. But if you're just sitting on your butt, not doing anything, you're not helping anyone. So at least have an idea of what you want to do next, and then create a structure to get there. Because the good thing about school is that there's structure. You have to go to class. You have to get this homework done. You have to get in on by a certain date. You have to register for your classes or whatever it is. But in the real world, if you don't set those things for yourself, you're just going to be living at your parents' all day. And I'm not saying it's bad to live at your parents' house, but you have to have a next step. Or you're just going to be the person that lives at their parents' house all day. So I think it's having the discipline, but also having someone to mentor you or to keep you accountable. You know, whether it's a friend, whether it's someone you hire or whatever it is, to keep you accountable. Because intrinsic motivation is strong, but it's not enough for most people. There has to be extrinsic motivation. So good to have self-discipline, but have someone hold you accountable, but also know why you're wanting to do something. Like, do you want to make money? Yeah, but why? I want to be independent. Yeah, but why? Like, it's like that whole Tony Robbins thing. Find your underlying why. But it's very, very powerful if you can find it. Because like losing weight, people will diet for a week, but the chances are they're not going to do it for multiple weeks or a year or their life. It's just the percentages aren't there. So that's why in weight loss programs, they try to get you and your friend to do it together to hold yourselves accountable, right? That's why it's built into those kind of programs. But ultimately, why you want to stay healthy, if you find it, is because you don't want to die early. You don't want to end up like that friend that died of heart disease or cancer or whatever it is way too early. You know, so if you can find yourself in those situations and then I want to be around for my family. I want to be around because if I'm dead, I can't help all these athletes. You know, that's a way of looking at it. Or if I'm dead, who are my kids? Who's going to raise my kids? I'm going to burden my wife to do it by herself. Like, you know, that's taking it to an extreme. But if you can start to think outside the box a little bit, it's like, okay, this is important to me. I'm not going to go. I don't think anyone does anything 100%, but do things in moderation where it's still going in the right direction. So I would say my long-winded answer to the 23-year-old is to have a goal, create some structure, have someone to hold you accountable, including yourself.
Good. What are bad recommendations you hear in your area of expertise? Could be sport performance, rehab, or taekwondo, or the three if you want. Something that you don't agree with.
I think from the injury standpoint is, at least when you get hurt, a lot of people just say rest and ice for 4 to 6 weeks and then start to go back. I think that's a huge mistake because your body's made to move, but we need to get it to move in the way that doesn't aggravate the injury. So you'll find it, I think it's most evident in endurance athletes that, okay, let's say they don't run for a week or two. How fast they decondition is huge. Especially soccer, football athletes, they run a lot. So if they're not running for a week or two, their conditioning goes to poop. And then we have to build that up. So how can we do it? We get them on a bike if they can, or get them on the assault bike where they're just using their upper body, stuff like that to get their heart pumping. So I would say that's my biggest thing from the injury standpoint. from the training preparation standpoint is more is not always better, right? Keep kicking, keep kicking, keep kicking until your leg falls off. Yes, but again, if you looked into the planning standpoint and then you're like, okay, instead of kicking a million times today, I actually thought this one out. I'm going to segment it into stretching and some paddle drills, and we'll work on the Hogu drills, and then we'll do some situational fighting, right? That spreads it out versus doing speed drills all day, every day. Because what's going to happen is overuse of that, not only that particular motion, but that particular mode of exercise. So like if you break it up into the gym, if all I did was bicep curls all day, I'm going to end up with some bicep pain. It makes sense. So why can't we take that understanding and put it into Taekwondo? Like you can, but I wouldn't recommend doing head kicks 100 to 200 times every day. And especially listening to the athlete, let's say they start to develop some pain, you might need to back up a little bit. Maybe give it a day in between when you're doing that particular exercise. So again, more is not always better. And being a little bit more analytical when looking at the plan and listening to your athlete. Yeah, some again, if you understand the athlete, is the person pushing because she's lazy? Or is the person not pushing because he or she's hurt? Or just the body can't do it anymore? And if you force it, it just might get worse. So yeah, I don't have straight answers all the time. They're all kind of like
it's perfect. For me, it's great. Last question. Well, before of how can people contact you, I want to know if there's some question that you would like to answer and I didn't ask you. Is it something you want to add?
No, I think overall that I think strength and conditioning and rehab and physiotherapy and Taekwondo and all that stuff is great. You're going to find a lot of information online, how to kick, how to do this technique, how to do this squat. But in order for it to work at its best capability, you have to be able to put it all together. That's a big thing. So I think we live. I think it's always been this way. People always wanted to be the master of everything. I want to be a master of strength and conditioning. I want to be a master of this, master of this. But it's realizing that there are other people that could add to your knowledge base. So you don't have to do all that work. And like I've been doing this a long, long time. So if I can give you some tidbits of information, okay, it's probably a credible source. Versus like, okay, like trying to figure it out for yourself. So I think like from the juice compound standpoint, I really hope to put those videos out within the next year or so. And I think hopefully because my questions are always like, what do I do about this injury? I'm like, I have no clue because I haven't examined you. I'm not going to give you things. So I don't want to necessarily put out anything that's like exact to your situation, but it's to provide it in a way for you to be able to critically think. I think 2-3 years ago, we put out the 5-kick domination sequence. And maybe I can I can send you that link or give you guys like a big discount or something like that. But basically we broke down roundhouse kick, side kick, axe kick, blah, blah, blah. I taught you, or Tim and I taught you how to look at it from a mobility standpoint, activation standpoint, functional standpoint. And I described why all these motions are important. So in a way, you can take that information and start to look at your own body and why isn't it functioning correctly without me doing the exam on you. And I think a lot of people really benefited from that program. So that's why my next step was to actually take it a little bit more specific to hamstring injuries and to break down, let's say, how I would progress someone from point A to point Z. And then along those lines, and I'll describe why we do it this way. So when you actually watch the videos and then you try yourself, like, okay, this is way too easy. And then you go, instead of starting at A, you start at F. And you start at F, you're like, oh, I kind of find my hamstring. I feel my hamstring a little bit. I got to regress it down. Because that's essentially what happens when I'm working with an athlete. I go, okay, try this. And then they do it, and then it's like, it's too easy. I go, does that hurt? No, it feels pretty easy. I was like, okay, let's try this one. But I'm not going to jump the gun to Z. I'm not going to have you do a max sprint because I skipped too many steps. I'm going to go a few letters over. Okay, now I start to feel it, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, let's regress it. Or whatever it is. So we're always trying to find the right entry point for your body to adapt. Because if you make things too easy, you're not adapting. It's too easy. It's like if you're doing bicep curls with 5 pounds, there's no way I'm going to get strong. But if I do 50 pounds, it's like it's way too hard. I'm probably creating more damage. So how for people to look at this sequence of events versus like, okay, this is a cool hamstring exercise on YouTube. Okay, best eccentric hamstring exercise, and you're doing like a Nordic hamstring curl. And then you're like, whoa, I feel like this doesn't tear out of my joint. It's like, probably too high for you, too hard for you. So how do you actually regress this for it to make sense for you? And either it's personal or you're trying to find the best exercise for your students, right? Because you, as a coach, and you have however many students you're teaching, you know who's at what kind of level, right? So you can kind of pick one exercise for everyone, or your black belts get this one because they're probably at this level. My green belts get this one because they're at this level. Or you have an adult class versus a kids class, stuff like that. So I think it's trying to get people to understand that there is a progression of events and not everyone should be starting at the same point. But to educate you enough where you're like, this makes sense. You don't have to understand all the physiology and stuff about it. Just know that this is the way this muscle works. This is the way this muscle works. And this is how it's active in this exercise and why it correlates to this specific kick or drill. I think it's a good learning base to kind of move from.
Good to know where as a coach I should start with this person, or as an athlete or a person, if I want to try this, what is the starting point?
Yeah, because that's always the question. What's the best exercise for XYZ? And like if one of my athletes that I usually see at my clinic, like she plays softball at in a college away from here. So she hurt her hamstring. She reaches out to me, and then I always start off with what happened, blah 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 blah. How far are we from the injury? What does it hurt to do? And because I'm not there, it hurts to do X, Y, Z, and I'll try to give one or two things to try without blowing it out of the park. And like, tell me how this feels. Oh, it hurts to do this. I was like, okay, try this one. And then that one feels good. It feels like it's working. It's not too sore afterwards. I was like, okay, that's our starting point. Right. But I'm basically diagnosing what the injury is without actually diagnosing it. I'm functionally diagnosing it in a way.
Amazing. Jason, how can people contact you?
Just I think go to my website, drjasonhan.com. My contact's on there. It's not too much information, but it links to kind of all my different practices. Feel free to email me from there. Yeah, pretty accessible. I don't know how fast I get back to you, but I got back to you pretty quick.
Yeah, quite good.
So Yeah, I reached out. I do my research. So I talked to Stephen Lambden, and I asked him about his interview with you. He said you're a good dude. So I was like, okay, like I trust the ones, I trust the people that I trust. Like if he trusts you, I trust you, kind of deal. So yeah, just go to drjasonhan.com and you can see all my contact info.
Thank you very much, Jason. It's been a pleasure. Really, really enjoyed the interview. Was kind of I think you communicate the message in the right way, your professional experience, but in a really practical way for athletes and coaches. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
I appreciate it, Luis.
See you soon, I hope.
Yeah.
I'll let you know
definitely.
when I publish the interview.
Okay.
Bye.
Awesome. Okay.